It's 11:05, and welcome into another edition of what, for lack of a better term, we are calling Heads Up 14. It is a series of political debates, informal political debates and discussions with the ultimate aim of making you a better informed voter in advance of the November 4th election, which is only 10 or 11 days away now. It's coming up a week from Tuesday. This morning, we are joined in studio by the three candidates in Maine House District 54. This is the seat now held by Democrat Anthony Mason, who has decided after just one term to step down, spend some more time with his young family. And there are three candidates vying to replace Anthony Mason, and they're all here. Democrat Denise Tepler is here. She is making her third try for this seat, having tried twice before in 2008 and 2010, losing on both occasions to the incumbent Republican Kerry Prescott. Denise is a local food advocate, a teacher and writer who has served 2 terms on the Topsham Finance Committee. Denise, thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you, Jim.
Kim Talbot is a small business owner. Talbot Technical Service is the business. Get a free commercial there, Kim. We're not going to charge you for that. Who defeated Susan Dolan in the June Republican primary, and this is your first bid for elective office, right, Kim?
That's correct.
And thanks for coming in. And Daniel Stromgren has been here before. He defines himself as a green independent in terms of profession. He is a clinical therapist and social worker. He was also a candidate in the special election last fall in State Senate District 19, an election which was ultimately won by the Democrat Eloise Vitelli. And Dan, thanks for coming in, and sorry to make you share a microphone with me, but our studio, as I've been explaining to everybody, is really built for 2 guests more than 3. So
that's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You can hold your own, I think. In thinking about the first questions I was going to ask this morning, we have here a Democrat, a Republican, a Green Independent, and most of you are not widely known to most people listening to this program right now. I'm sorry to report that, but that's the reality. So I thought it would be interesting to have you perhaps define yourselves in terms of the celebrities in your party, the standard bearers in your party, and in terms of the upcoming election in Maine, this would be LePage, the Republican governor. This would be Mike Michaud, the Democratic candidate for governor. And I was trying to think about who would be an appropriate Green Party reference, and the only name that comes to mind is Ralph Nader. So in a moment, I'll ask Dan how or if at all he would compare himself to Ralph Nader, but I'm going to start with Denise. Denise, how are you like or not like Mike Michaud, the veteran congressman from the 2nd District, who's the standard bearer of your party this year?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Jim. Thank you. I think I'm like Mike in that I have a fair amount of experience and knowledge about what's going on in Topsham, as Mike has knowledge about what's going on in the U.S. by serving in Congress. And I also think I'm like Mike in that I'm in favor of expansion of the Maine Care program in Maine and want to see 70,000 people receive coverage that they're not currently receiving.
And this would be done at federal expense?
Yes, at least for the first 3 years. And then hopefully the cost savings would help Maine to cover the cost as the federal money phases out.
How are you unlike Mike in any way? Because Mike Michaud has over the years garnered a reputation as more of a moderate kind of Democrat than, let's say, a progressive Democrat.
Well, I think I agree with Mike on a lot of issues, perhaps not on every issue. It's a little difficult to say because...
what do you disagree with him about?
Well, in the past, I disagreed with him about abortion and with gay rights. Currently, his position is the same as mine. Okay.
He has, and I think he would say this, he has morphed, we might say, on those issues.
Yes, he's changed his mind because of increased knowledge and familiarity with the issues, which is, I think, something we should respect in our legislators.
Kim Talbot, would you class yourself as a LePage Republican?
I am similar, yes, in the sense that, well, first of all, similarities, and I think this sort of answers your question, is that I grew up in welfare, like LePage, so I have that perspective that I bring every day to how I make my decisions, how I approach people in their situations. The other thing is that I've been in business for myself for 30 years. I've been in the private sector for a long time, and I understand what it's like to start from nothing and build your career and your life up from nothing with no real resource except for your hard work and your education that you put forward. So that's the similarity. So very similar, I think he and I evaluate life and everything that comes across our desk in probably the same way.
Okay. Dan Stromgren, you define yourself again as a green independent candidate. I'll put it this way. When most people hear green in terms of politics, they think of the kind of people who are extremely environmentally focused, more on that than anything else. People who own kayaks and spend all weekend in the woods, things like that. How do you think you either correlate or perhaps run counter to the green stereotype?
Well, I've spent 20 years working on Maine's environment, and certainly have embraced the Green Party in part because of their environmental views. When you were asking earlier about sort of a standard bearer, right here in Topsham we have John Rensenbrink, who is the founder of the United States Green Party as well as the Maine Green Party, and has been a mentor and an inspiration throughout my journey in politics. One of the things that I've set out to do is sort of to redefine what it means to be a green candidate, and I think that pigeonholing of us strictly as environmentalists certainly is true about part of our platform, and certain party members choose to focus on the environment. But one of the things that I did in the Senate race and have done in this race is to really expand that message and to start talking about community and really focusing on what it means to establish a local voice and focus on the issues that are important and be in favor of direct representation of the people and uninfluenced by any corporate or PAC money. That's a big difference between us and the other two parties.
Okay. Let's cover that since Dan brought it up. Denise, how are you raising funds in this election? And are you, and I should know this, but I don't, are you running clean elections?
I'm a clean elections candidate.
Okay, and explain what that means.
Well, what that means for me, because I was a replacement candidate when Andrew Mason did make the decision after the primary to step out, is I had to get a certain number of signatures and $5 contributions from local people who supported my campaign. Those contributions went to the Clean Elections Fund, and then after that I was able to collect $500 in small money individual donations, and then I qualified for the allotment from the Clean Elections Fund, which for me was less than the other candidates because I did not receive primary funds.
Okay, bottom line, you're significantly limited in what you can spend. I think that's the bottom line. Yeah. Kim Talbot, how about you?
I'm sorry, the same question.
How are you?
I'm clean election.
So we have 3 clean elections candidates here.
Yes, indeed.
That is that's awesome. Relatively unusual. In fact, I don't know that I've ever come across that. Dan, anything else you want?
Yeah, and interesting enough, just to address that,
you need
there is a
microphone.
We're all running as clean election candidates, but one of the things that our party will do is that we will openly ask corporate donors and PACs not to support us. When we were in the Ivanhoe neighborhood the other day, they were canvassing, I think it was Maine's Middle Class, which is a Donald Sussman super PAC, and handing out literature on behalf of Mike Michaud, Eloise Vitelli, and Ms. Tepler. So, it's one thing to say that you're a clean election candidate, but it would be nice, I guess, if everybody here came out and actually said, that they're not interested in receiving that support.
Okay, Denise, if you want to respond to that, I'll let you do it down the line. But right now I want to move on to the economy, which I think is the focus for a lot of people. And to keep this entirely fair, I'm going to change the order each time of the questions, because I think we had to do it that way. The economy has been a major focus for the governor's campaign. It seems that we have picked up in terms of jobs in the state in recent years, as has been the trend throughout the country. There are also some very credible statistics showing that Maine, in overall economic development and progress, is lagging behind the rest of New England. So, Kim, would you say in general we're on the right track or wrong track in the handling of the Maine economy, and what specifically could we do to make it better?
Well, I think in general, we're not on the right track yet, but I think we're trying to work towards that. That's why this election is so important, because I think there's been so much gridlock up in Augusta that the right thing for the Maine people is just not happening for whatever reason, whether it's party politics or whatever. So I think until that occurs, until people are willing to reach across the aisle and work together and do what's right for the people of Maine, we're not going to be on the right track.
Let me ask you about a key economic issue that Denise brought up, the proposed expansion of Medicaid. You have a lot of people in the state's business community saying that would be a very sound financial move, improve the coverage base, save the state a large sum of money over a period of time. That a bad idea?
Well, my understanding, and I met with the head of the Maine Hospital Association, Steve Michaud, about that, because the Hospital Association is for the expansion. And part of that reason is that the federal government really forced their hand because they cut off federal funding to the hospitals in hopes that the expansion would go through, then they would get their money from the expansion. So that's obviously they're going to be for it because of that. Philosophically, I'm against it because it expands our Medicare rolls, Medicaid rolls, and I am all for enabling people to have hope, get job skills, and get a good paying job. And I think this limits them from being able to do that because it doesn't provide services to be able to get people off the rolls and get them into the job market. So.
In a lot of cases, you are talking about children, though, and impoverished
children. That is not. I'm talking about adults.
Okay.
I'm not talking about children. I think children should always, if they're impoverished, yes, they need the help that they should get. So.
Okay, Dan Stromgren, I'd like to hear from you on the Medicaid issue, but I'd also like to know if you think we're on the right track or the wrong track in handling the economy in this state, and what is specifically is possible we could do to make it better.
Well, I think as far as the economy goes, what we need to do is really focus on local economies and supporting Maine businesses that are going to provide Maine students and residents with jobs. So we need to provide education and vocational training and then have the jobs available. What we've done here in Topsham is we've created a lot of service industry jobs, but they're mostly corporate jobs that we spend money at Home Depot or Target, and then that money is put on a truck and shipped out of state back to those corporations' home base. If we're focusing on property taxes and looking at that being as one of the biggest issues that I've encountered while talking to people at their doors. A lot of that comes from giving these corporations TIFs and building their infrastructure, and we need promises from them that they'll reinvest in the local economy and reinvest in their communities.
By the way, when you talk about TIFs, it's important to define some of these acronyms that we casually throw around. A TIF is a tax increment financing district that basically provides tax incentives for businesses to expand and also shields certain, I believe, tax revenue and prevents certain forms of bracket creep and things like that at the municipal level. Am I getting that pretty close to correct?
That's correct. And my belief is that if we're going to provide TIFs to companies, that we really need to do that for local companies, Maine-owned and Maine-grown companies. One of the most frustrating things to me is when we talk about how we're going to attract jobs to Maine. I think that the character of our state is such that we can create jobs here, and we shouldn't always be looking to attract jobs, but looking at how do we, put us in a position to have our own job creation.
Okay, Denise, you've already said you're in favor of expanding Medicaid. What else should we be doing to improve the economy? And again, you think we're in general on the right track or the wrong track in Maine?
Well, right track and wrong track is a little difficult. I think it's more complicated than that. I do think that I agree with Dan on several of the issues that he touched on. I think we need to focus on strengthening our small businesses in the state. I think helping them to enable them to capitalize when they need to. I spoke to a local businesswoman, Judy Payne showed, who owns Grandpa's Garden, which is a business located in Topsham's Business Park. And she would like to do some expansion, but has issues with capitalization. So that's something we need to look at if we want more job growth. Another thing is that Maine is very underinvested in research and development. And if we want 21st century jobs, we need to think about prioritizing research and development, particularly in STEM and technological fields.
Here's a question. I'll go to Kim on this first, or I think I went to Kim first last time, so I'll go to Dan. This is an issue that I hear pop up from time to time. It has not been widely discussed in this campaign, but I still think it matters to a lot of people. The so-called homestead exemption was repealed a couple of years ago, and this basically benefits people who may have much of their net worth tied up in property and land, but their incomes may not be so great. Should that be restored, Dan?
I agree with restoring the Homestead Act. People's homes are not only one of the largest investments that they'll ever have, but they also hold a lot of the historical traditions and values, and often are passed down through families. We talk about increasing the use of local agribusiness and promoting the growth of local agribusiness, and we need to also look at providing tax breaks to local farmers and implement a land use tax similar to the one that we've used on the waterfront. So I certainly think that if we want people to stay in Maine, and people want to enjoy Maine for all of the things that generations of their family have, that we need to provide them the opportunity to keep the family land. Okay,
Denise, should we restore the homestead exemption?
Absolutely. Property taxes are very regressive. They hit very hard on our elderly population. I'm very concerned about people who would really like to age in place, which is a value that I think we want to grow in Maine. We want people to be able to age in their homes as their incomes become fixed on Social Security, but their property taxes continue to rise, particularly with the loss of revenue sharing from state government. We have a real problem enabling our elders to stay in their homes or our low-income neighbors, and I would really like to see the homestead exemption restored.
Okay, and Kim Talbot, homestead exemption.
I agree with that. I mean, the one big issue that I've knocking on doors is the senior citizens and property taxes, but I think one of the other issues is that it stop people from being able to stay in their homes, and walking around neighborhoods and seeing houses that are under foreclosure is the energy costs that are going on in the state of Maine. And as of probably 8 years ago, people were spending maybe $1,000 to heat their home. Now they're spending 3 times that amount, and you can't say that that's not affecting the senior citizens that are on a fixed income.
Okay, it's 11:24 here on Saturday morning. We're just over halfway through this. How time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
And because the nature of radio is such that people tune in and tune out and join in progress, in many cases, I'm going to reintroduce everybody here because I think that would be helpful. Again, we're spending a half an hour this morning, maybe just a tad bit longer than that, with the 3 candidates in Maine House District 54 in the election coming up a week from Tuesday. This again is the seat now held by the Democrat Anthony Mason, who is voluntarily stepping down after just 1 term in office to spend some more time with his family. 3 candidates seeking to replace them. to replace him, that is, and they are Democrat Denise Tepler, making her third try for this seat. Kim Talbot is here. She's the Republican candidate, a small business owner, Talbot Technical Service. Another quick free commercial there, Tim, who defeated Susan Dolan in the recent Republican primary. And Dan Stromgren is here. We can almost call him, I think, at this stage, a veteran Maine political activist. Yeah, you really are. And he is a green independent. He's also a clinical therapist and a social worker. Okay, now a question that's, I think, guaranteed to allow us to have some fun. Denise Tepler, should we legalize marijuana in Maine?
Well, I actually, Jim, am undecided on this issue still. I have heard some stories from local people which concern me. I've spoken to police officers who live in Topsham who are concerned about the impact of the growth of marijuana-based OUIs locally. I've also heard some concern about how are we going to regulate the substance to keep it out of the hands of children. On the other hand, I realize that we have legalized alcohol, which presents a lot of the same issues, and the regulation of marijuana and the legalization of marijuana would remove, I guess, some organized crime from a trade that is quite common in the state of Maine. So that, there are voices on both sides of this issue, and I am still listening, and I want to watch the 3 states that have legalized marijuana and the countries abroad for examples of what we should and should not do.
Okay, Kim Talbot, same question for you, and I'm going to add to that an observation that has been made by some proponents of marijuana legalization who say that to keep it illegal is effectively to empower the criminal element, the drug dealers who control the drug traffic as long as marijuana and other drugs remain illegal. Your view?
Yeah, I think for now I would vote against it, but I do struggle with sort of the libertarian view of saying let's just take all of the binds off of the drugs and have a free market. But I come down to, again, how things are going on in Colorado, and they're having, marijuana-laced lollipops and cookies, which for me promotes it to children, and that I have a real problem with that. And I go to the basic premise of talk to your law enforcement, and they are against it. And for right now, that's where I stand. Okay,
Dan Stromgren, Green Independent candidate. Should we legalize marijuana?
I've been working on legalization efforts in Maine since 1994 when I worked with Maine Vocals on the initial petition drive. Over the years, I've really kind of evaluated and reevaluated my position on this, and what I truly believe is that it's a local issue, and it's an issue that should be left up to the municipalities. Like Ms. Tepler said, we have legalized alcohol, and do we pick the lesser of 2 evils, or do we just justify one evil with another? Certainly, substance abuse is a problem in Maine. I think what I would do on this issue is that part of your role as a legislator is to go up and to use your own creativity and your own ideas to craft policy. There's also an element of direct representation that I think issues like this really support. And if it was to come before the legislature, what I would do would be to poll Topsham residents to find out what the Topsham majority is interested in and bring that vote to the legislature.
Okay, we're going to move on. Start this time with Kim Talbot. Mm-hmm. Question 1 on the ballot this fall is the bear baiting referendum. Been a good deal of controversy about this one, especially in recent weeks. This is worded so that a yes vote would ban the baiting of bears through the use of bait, dogs, and traps. I think we've all heard the arguments at this point. The proponents of the ban simply say over and over again that baiting baiting is very cruel. And they point out that Maine is apparently the only state in the union that allows bear baiting, at least in these forms. However, the opponents of the proposed ban, including a number of so-called experts at the places like the State Division of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, say there is actually valuable research on animals and other aspects of our natural life that is gained through all this. So, Kim, where do you come down?
I come down on the no vote side, and I think the real issue that crossed me over into the no vote is the fact that if the yes vote wins, the management of bears will go on, and that the state will have to use taxpayer dollars to basically hire bounty hunters to go and use the same methods that the yes vote is banning to capture these bears and to control the population. So instead of using taxpayer dollars, let the hunters in the industry that Northern Maine is part of, their health and well-being up there, let them continue with the process. So.
Dan Stromgren, Green Independent candidate, yes or no on the question 1 referendum on bear baiting?
Excuse me. I support a no vote. I've worked closely over the years with IF&W. I have great faith in their biologists to be honest with the Maine people and to manage our wildlife in the way that they've been doing as an excellent job and to continue to do. So I think a no vote's appropriate. And I think also what tipped the scales for this on me, again, goes back to the out-of-state money and the influence that has come from people other than Mainers in regards to this issue.
Okay. And just to clarify again, the question is worded so that a yes vote would ban bear baiting and a no vote effectively opposes a ban. And Denise Tepler, your view?
Yes, I joined Dan and Kim in a no vote.
Wow.
So all three of us agree. I am concerned about two things. One is I've spoken to a friend, Callie Pecunis, who's running for the legislature in northwestern Maine, and this is certainly an economic issue in northwestern Maine that we need to worry about. And the other concern that I have is that regulations should be based on science and data and not on sound bites. And I feel strongly that in a referendum like this, we're basing our decisions on sound bites and emotions. And I really think that we should be regulating our wildlife population based much more on a scientific approach.
I'm going to end here before we go into the closing statements. I'm going to end with a question. This is why it's fun to be a moderator, because you can at some point ask your own question, even if nobody cares about it. I think a lot of people actually do care about this, and I'm surprised that I don't hear it discussed more often. Now, we're going to have an election. John Richardson, the former Democratic Speaker of the House here in Maine, he's now on the Brunswick Town Council, does a bit of commentary here every weekend in which he answers Governor LePage. And in the edition of LePage and Richardson that's coming up at noon today, Richardson remarks that when the election is over, a week from Tuesday, and all the ballots are counted up, about 60% of the voters, at least in terms of the election for governor, are going to be disappointed, because it's very likely that somebody's going to be elected governor with about 40% of the vote, which causes me to wonder, why in this state don't we have a runoff that would essentially isolate the top two candidates and ensure that in the end, the person who becomes governor does so with at least 50% of the vote or something close to it. Even if that person is not your first choice, you get a second shot, and the candidate with the lesser number of votes is dropped off the ballot in a runoff. My understanding from a friend of mine who's spent a number of years lobbying the legislature tells me that every time one of these bills gets proposed, it somehow dies in Augusta. But Dan, I just wonder what you think of that as an idea. Shouldn't we do something to ensure that on the morning after the election, 60% of the people who vote in the election for governor don't wake up disappointed?
I've always supported ranked choice voting, and one of the biggest barriers in this state to an IRV or ranked choice voting system has been the Democrats, and that's typically because third parties and independents are seen as challenges to the liberal base far more than they are to the conservative base. So I think that having a system that allows for a second or third choice and provides for a majority election makes the most sense. And I get frustrated when I hear anybody talk about anybody else needing to drop out of a race. I think that every candidate has a right to run a race into the end. And so we need to change our system to make that possible.
So you would favor a runoff?
I would favor some form of ranked choice voting, whether it was a runoff or using certain mathematical equations that are out there.
Okay, Denise Tepler, how about you?
I would like to study this issue more, Jim. I certainly don't want to be the first state to initiate this kind of thing and experiment with our election system. To me, this is something I'd like to watch, perhaps on a local level or on a slightly higher level. What are we going to initiate ranked choice voting on? Are we going to initiate it on all races in the state, only on our gubernatorial race? So I have some questions about it. I understand the idea behind it, and I think that that's a good idea, but I'm not sure that I want our statewide election system to be an experiment.
Okay. I don't know how long, I just observed, I don't know how long it's been. It has been a good many years since a governor here in Maine was elected with more than 50% of the vote. I mean, it's
well,
a long
that's
time.
great. That's correct. And I think we always have disappointment in our life. And so I think Baldacci in his first or second term won by 38%.
Oh,
yeah. And so, this isn't a unique situation. And I agree with Denise. I think I really would like to see the effect that something like that would have on our tax dollars in the process. And I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but if somebody, puts a bill on the table, we'll discuss it.
Okay, here's the one point in the program at which I'm going to keep some kind of a close eye on the clock. We talked before we went on here this morning about closing statements. We talked about a minute, about 2 minutes. Let's try to make it 90 seconds, okay? And I'm going to start with Denise Tepler. Wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you for inviting us all here this morning. I truly appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I'd like to ask our listeners in Topsham for their vote. I hope you feel that I've earned it. I've served 6 years, 2 terms on our school board and 2 terms on our town finance committee. I'm very familiar with our public budgeting in town, and I am very concerned with our property taxes. I've raised my 3 children here in Topsham. They all went to Williams Cone School and to Mount Ararat High School, and I strongly support keeping our education system strong. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this beautiful sunny day.
And once again, we run into a lot of this lately. Candidates who don't utilize all their allotted time, and who knows, voters may reward you for that on election. Kim Talbot, go ahead.
Well, again, I want to thank Jim as well, and I asked for your vote, but I wanted to really thank the people of Topsham. This is my first time running, going to knock on doors, and the people of Topsham have been so gracious and welcoming. And I've had just a great experience with their pets and enjoying the conversation. We've laughed, we've cried, and I hope that we each have gotten to know each other pretty well. What a great experience. But I think one of the things that I bring to the table in this whole election is the fact that I view things as not throwing money at situations, but let's solve the problems of today, and let's get Maine back where it needs to be. This is a beautiful state. I love to be part of it, and let's be proud of what's going on in Augusta. Thank you.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, Daniel Stromgren, Green Independent candidate.
I think that we have a tremendous opportunity in Topsham to elect somebody who is going to effectively speak for us with a strong independent voice. And I feel that I offer Topsham a candidate who's free from special interest and PAC money and comes with real ideas and a plan for the future. Instead of just talking about crossing the aisle, I've often talked about creating a new aisle and using that power of independence to support green values in a way that can integrate and bring Topsham's voice in an honest and transparent way to Augusta. I've always valued preserving Maine's heritage and traditions. I've been endorsed by Maine conservation voters, but I also understand the need to support the economy that we've all talked about this morning, and that includes providing livable wage jobs, growing our local economies, controlling spending, reducing taxes, providing for educational and vocational opportunities for our young adults and children. I believe that this is only possible if you've already begun to think about the solutions, and I've worked hard in this campaign to define myself and kind of stay away from the party rhetoric that often dominates our literature. Topsham residents have the right to vote without ambiguity, and I believe enough in my values and ideas that I encourage Topsham voters to research all of the candidates, to look at what each one is putting out there as their views, and looking at their detailed plans for the future, and then choosing who's best suited. I'd ask for your support because I believe that a vote for me is a vote for real ideas and substantive, thoughtful plans for the future. And I think Maine's biggest strength and its greatest resource is the people. So thank you.
Okay, thanks to all three of you. And again, I will note, if you just turned on your radio a little while ago and have been wondering, what is that? I don't hear that every week at this time. We'll tell you again, we've been hearing from the three candidates in Maine House District 54, the seat now held by Democrat Anthony Mason, who's retiring, at least temporarily, after one term. Democrat Denise Tepler, Republican Kim Talbot, and Dan Stromgren, Green Independent candidate. The election is 1 week from Tuesday. This has been another edition of Heads Up 14, a series of political debates and discussions designed to make you a better informed voter. I'm Jim Blykamp at Radio 9 WCME.